Welcome to Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed. Get ready to dive into the world of nonprofit leadership and sustainability, where the passion and unstoppable dedication of those making a real impact are celebrated. With your host, Jarrett Ransom, get ready to explore inspiring stories and game changing strategies of nonprofit leaders from across the sector. In this season, we're focusing on critical management challenges that are key to the long-term success of nonprofit organizations. Nonprofit Nerd Impact Unleashed is your go-to podcast for no-nonsense, in-depth conversations with the real-life superheroes of the nonprofit sector. Get ready to unleash your inner nerdiness and learn how to navigate and overcome the challenges that help build stronger, more sustainable organizations. Now, let's dive in and harness the collective power of our nonprofit networks to create lasting change.
Hey, and welcome back to today's episode. I am thrilled to have Erik Speakman joining us. Erik is passionate about partnership, and I definitely felt that energy as he shared his stories with me. In this episode, we dive into strategies for nonprofit collaboration, competitive advantage, and strategic partnerships. We also explore the benefits of neutral facilitation, partnership development processes, as well as how leadership can transition the shift of the organizational focus. Have a listen as Erik shares his insights from his journey transitioning from corporate work to nonprofit consulting, his experience supporting organizations in building strong partnerships, and practical advice for nonprofits that are looking to maximize impact while staying true to their core mission. A big thank you to Bloomerang for sponsoring this season and these critical conversations. I hope you enjoy this conversation that I had with Erik. Well, hey there, and welcome back. I am so thrilled today because Erik Speakman is joining me. And Jenny Waller, if you're listening, shout out to you and gratitude because thanks to a previous guest who I just mentioned, Jenny Waller, she so kindly, generously introduced me to you, Erik. So welcome.
Thank you very much. I love kindred souls. So I'm really excited. And I think this is absolute perfect timing for this dialogue.
I think it's great too. And for all of our listeners, maybe they know you because I know you've got a bit of a reputation and I think it's a good one. But would you tell us a little bit about yourself and the role or roles, plural, right, that you play in this lovely sector that we adore?
Yeah, I'm going to make a long story short, but I was doing work making rich people richer. And then I got shot at Music Midtown in Atlanta. And it just kind of, and I just had a bad experience with making somebody richer. And then it was like, okay, this is a message. I need to do something. And I thought, why does a youth feel like their only outlet in life is to carjack and to shoot somebody? We got to do something about that. And so I changed. I switched into this. But what I took was from my corporate work was both a theme of facilitation and collaboration, right? As opposed to the ivory tower consulting that, I facilitate groups of stakeholders, primarily beginning with a nonprofit, a collaborative strategic planning process to engage appropriately all their stakeholders. What do they call it now? Co-creation with lived experience. We just called it meeting with clients and getting their ideas on how to improve the organization years ago. And then when I work with them, I'm a firm believer that an organization needs to stick to what it does best and partner for the rest. So I'm very active in then finding those appropriate partnerships for that organization and then supporting the leaders, both the board and the executive director, CEO, and being the best leader they can be to be able to implement those plans and partnerships. And then a little dabbling in fundraising here and there.
Little dabbling. Well, that is fantastic. I appreciate that setup because it really does set the stage for the conversation we are about to have. I invited you to come in, talk about strategic partnerships, collaborations, what makes sense, what might not make sense, for you to share a little bit of your own war stories, if you will, right? Like as you've served time in the trenches. But let's start off by sharing really, when does collaboration make sense? I mean, we talk about, or we hear about competition, we talk about collaboration, we talk about all of these ways, but when really does it make sense to collaborate versus maybe compete for resources in particular?
Sure. I think that's an absolutely perfect question for this time. And I've actually changed my thinking since, with the nonprofit fiscal cliff and certain changes with the administration and funding, that I think in a good ecosystem that you have to do both. First that you need to do, and I've been saying for years, is it was interesting. That I believe that you need to focus on your competitive advantage. I'm a Michael Porter fan, and so I read all this stuff, and so I've been saying for years, nonprofits need to look at competitive advantage. And people always look at me like, you're crazy. That's for corporate work. And
Right.
then when I raised it with a national expert, shortly after the January 20th executive orders, person said, "No, everyone's so sensitive right now. We can't use the word competition." And I said, how about compassionate competition? So it's working compassionately together, right? You're not going to try to eviscerate your competitor. You want to know what you do best, right? So go through an internal analysis, do a competitor analysis, and then you figuring out what you do uniquely better than what are the perceived competitors within your market, right? And so nonprofits say, well, we don't have competitors. Oh, yes, you do. Just ask your funders. They'll tell you, the foundations will tell you who's perceived to be competitors, right? You're competing for dollars, for people, for staff, and community awareness and resources. So you have to think of yourself as a compassionate competitor. So, and then meeting with those competitors so that you all collectively know what you do best. I think then an example of this is we're doing it in a couple homeless continuums of care right now, that we're working with the homeless service providers, to figure out who does what the best within that continuum. All right. And then owning it, going out and saying, we do intake best, we do this best, whatever the case may be. And then what they've decided to do is they are collaborating together around trying to do more comprehensive and longer term case management and supportive services once somebody's housed, because that's what wasn't being funded with HUD, right? And so so they're collectively going out and fundraising for that, and then also prevention dollars. So each one is going out to fundraise for their niche, and then collectively they're fundraising to offer better support, so that those individuals transition through the continuum properly, and then are supported after their house, so they stay housed.
I
So
love that
I think
continuum.
we can do both.
Yeah, I like that answer. Like, why do we have to pick just one? It's like when you go to an ice cream store, right? Like, you can have multiple flavors, so why not pick both here?
I buy two every time I go, right? Even though my 17-year-old son doesn't want us to have sugar because we're too old, we shouldn't be eating sugar, I always get two and sneak it and hide it in the deep freezer so he can't see it.
Very smart. I hope your son's not listening to this podcast.
Oh, no, he's not going to be listening to this.
Okay, let's talk about red flags, because I love what you just shared, but I'm really curious if there's some red flags, right, that we should think of when a partnership won't work. And I can only imagine, Erik, that you have seen maybe some typical issues arise. Could you share some best practices as well, or even some lessons you've learned on what doesn't work so we don't make those same mistakes?
Yeah, and what's really how it fits so well with the timing right now is that everyone is now sort of thinking about it, and I learned that a best practice is that if you put the time in at the beginning of the process, your assessment, your analysis, and then sort of determining clearly what you want to get out of the partnership, what you bring to the table, what you want from that partner, and then beginning that conversation properly. You do that up front and spend some time in relationship building, getting to know each other up front, that it speeds up the processes at the back end. It's just like any relationship. You need to trust each other before you can have very deep, conversations about who's going to be the CEO. If you merge this organization, who's going to be at the board, right? These are the typical issues that come up a lot. So, I'm just seeing a lot of red flags and people not, like somebody just reaching out and saying, hey, we're in trouble right now. Will you take us over?
Oh, yes. I'm seeing that too, Erik.
Hey, if you don't take us over, we are going to not succeed. And unfortunately, I had a bad experience on that one time, and they waited too long. And once they got too long, they were in such bad financial state that nobody wanted them. So that we had to do an asset transfer, the things they did well, and then file bankruptcy for the organization. So first of all, trying to get this thing started before you're in bad shape, right? To prevent that red flag. Spend the time to know yourself, and be willing to be open, transparent, and honest, just like any relationship, in the front end, to be able to help make that work. Other things that we're starting to see more red flags this year is boards are very reluctant around the word debt. Is just a really nasty word right now. For instance, earlier this year, we tried to merge two very large organizations, and the one had a little bit of debt, but their balance sheet was still solid, right? Looking at it financially, they have equity, they have a good balance sheet, but the other organization just saw debt, and they took a hit in funding from the federal government. That they're just more risk adverse. Everyone seems to be more risk adverse related to finances. I don't know if you're seeing that right now, and so. But a red flag and not being open, to really dig into the books and learn a little bit more of what's causing that and to see if there's a solution to it. And the other one is with others coming, seeking help, that we have others that are in a sort of a takeover mode, right? And we've got board members that are, experts from McKinsey and others that this is a takeover. And I just learned if you want to have a relationship with somebody, coming to them and saying, we're going to take you over. I don't know. I just never found that to be a good way to begin a relationship. And with today's heightened concern about finances, it is really a toxic term. So just people using toxic terms of we're better than you, we're taking you over, just totally kills a good partnership.
Well, I would imagine, and as we talk through this, like partnerships could be a merger and acquisition. It could
Correct.
be a transfer asset. Or asset transfer. It could be, a more, I don't know, substantial partnership, right? It doesn't necessarily mean we are dissolving our nonprofit or losing our EIN number, right? Like there's so many ways that this could look like.
Very true.
And I'm really curious because your answer made me think about the boards, the leadership, like the staff. Is it better to bring in someone like you, someone like me, others that can like facilitate these conversations in a more neutral way? Because I can only imagine somebody coming in leadership wise to say, hey, we're better than you in this area, but maybe having this neutral party is really a benefit to bring into the fold of these conversations. Do you think that's accurate?
Well, I like to make a living. Some not, still offer below competitive rates, but no, I think it's a better return on investment for the community. To be quite honest, we have an example of one. I can't say who was involved in this, but two decent sized organizations in Atlanta where they tried to self-facilitate it. And so they had the executive, the CEO that would be the CEO of the consolidated organization was to facilitate the process, right? Do due diligence, and then work, try to get both to work together, which was next to impossible process. And what it had them trying to do it themselves is that it drug out and it drug out and it drug out longer and longer and longer, right? And then what happened was at the end of it, they were so burnt out from the process that they had no energy, which is understandable, to put The process needs to work that you come through whatever negotiation, the negotiation process and whatever structure you choose. And you're right, there's a plethora of options, from collaboration all the way to the merger, that you come through that energized. Because it's a lot of work in that first year to do it right, to be able to accomplish that 1 + 1 = 3, of a true effective partnership. So, I think and also the way I do it as an outsider is I view everything as a community asset, not the asset of partner A and partner B. And that's their thinking, right? That's just human nature. They think of it as my asset. That's our asset. I know. I had a very wise super consultant billing crazy hours, super rich kind of stuff, and they just couldn't get it in their mind. No, these are our assets, almost like my assets, and I want to make sure that we get a good return on investment of this merger to enhance my equity. So, viewing it, having somebody that sees it that way, that can lessons learned, can mediate conflict in between meetings and during meetings, so you'd be able to move this thing in a decent pace that doesn't burn people out for implementation.
Burn people or the money, right? I've seen the money burn out too.
Well, the community invested $100,000 in that partnership that did not work out. So there was a little bad taste in our funder community about wanting to jump back and invest in the, and I feel like at this point in time, we can't do that right now. We can't have another bad success story. That we need some great success stories to get people energized about looking at strategic partnership options. And also, we've learned it so much. It's what used to cost $50,000 to $75,000 to do one of these, from our lessons learned, can be done from $15,000 to $20,000, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. My finance degree says that's a pretty good, especially if you're putting two organizations together, two $2 million organizations, that then you create 1 + 1 = 3, that they're, they become a $5 million organization. I think investing $15,000 to $25,000 from the community to produce those results, I got to do my math on that. Yeah, that's a good return on investment. That is a good return on investment.
That is a good. Well, let's flip the script into what has been successful. And I'm really curious about moving the needle, right? Is there any particular example that comes to mind, Erik, of a nonprofit collaboration that really moved the needle for the community?
Yeah, I got two. And there's, we talk about there's two, the two extremes, collaboration and a partnership. One was my very first collaboration. We called it the 5-Star Collaborative. And it was a collaboration of 5 Southern state public broadcasting organizations. This might have been 97, 90s. It's a while back. There was no change in the governance, the structure, the operations, anything about the individuals in this organization. But they together did, bringing them together and recognize some common needs, like they were having to go switch to digital. So they did a joint purchase of digital equipment, got down the cost really low. They did joint pledge drives. They did joint direct mail campaigns and other fundraising efforts. They did joint advocacy together to be able to get more funding support for the digital transformation. And then it worked so well that they actually hired a staff, and that staff was able to, continue this work of this collaborative that, I think that made the digital transformation in public broadcasting here in the South a very smooth and effective transition. And the other is a merger of 2 refugee serving organizations here in Clarkston, Georgia, which is like second in diversity only to some place in Miami, right? 159 different languages, right, are spoken in this community. One organization literally went to the airport and picked the person up, and worked with them. And then another organization worked on the getting them the case management to get them employed, get them education, help them move forward as a successful new American. And so we brought the two together. There was some economies of scale by bringing two decent sized organizations together. But what the great thing was, we're able to pick you up on the plane all the way to you being self-sufficient. A proud American citizen, tax-paying citizen. A lot of them ended up starting businesses, and then bringing them together. They both had a name that nobody knew, so through the process, were able to get branding support, and they came up with the name New American Pathways, and that organization is flourished, and one of the best here in Atlanta, and was able to attract a lot new funding dollars and make not only a better outcome for those served, but also being able to serve a whole lot more at the same time. So I was super proud about both of those two.
Yeah, those are both great stories. And again, it kind of speaks to what's possible out there. I'm really curious, maybe in one of these stories or both of these stories, you can talk about how the leaders really nurtured trust as well as reciprocity. That's a hard word today, in partnerships, right? Because I'm thinking board, the key leaders of the teams, right? Like that's really important. So how do we nurture this trust and that reciprocity that is likely so needed to create really good, solid, healthy partnerships?
We do it just like in a planning process. So we sort of use concentric circles of leadership and building support, right? So, these two usually come about. If somebody wants to look at a big, go from a collaboration to a bigger partnership, right? We've been dating for a while. Hey, maybe let's move in together, share a space, or hey, maybe let's get married. And so what happens is the two EDs say, hey, man, let's look at this, right? Or two board chairs at a social gathering after a couple cocktails. Hey, why don't we merge these two together? And so we, first sit down with the CEOs, and initially with each of them to better understand and help guide them through that internal assessment. Know thyself, the Oracle of the Delphi. Know thyself. Know what you're bringing to the table, and that we try to create that environment with the CEO of being willing to be open and transparent. We do this really well, and we're very proud of that, but we're not so great in fundraising, or we don't have the right technology we need, right? So be willing to be open and honest and creating a safe space for them to do that. And then we just sort of build that out. Then a meeting with the CEOs and the board chairs. And if they like that concept, then we create a partnership task force of an equal amount of board members from both organizations. So it's seen as equals in a negotiation and discussion. Then, staff leadership, staff, volunteers, funders, and community. So we start with that relationship where it's manageable, creating that trust and slowly spread that out. And we find if we do that and we do it right, that there's tons of support and excitement for implementing, right? And that's got to be it, right? If people aren't excited about doing, they're not going to do, and then that partnership's not going to achieve the outcomes that we know that it could.
Well, your process, it makes it sound like there's so much intentionality baked into it, and I think that's really something that we need. I know I appreciate it. Clients that I work with really appreciate that intentionality as well. And setting that tone, right? Modeling it from the beginning and then kind of working out into these circles, I think is fantastic. So as this is being recorded and being dropped, this conversation, we're looking at the end of the calendar year, right? So here we are, end of 2025, Erik. I think we're going to start seeing more of these strategic partnerships, collaborations, M&As, mergers and acquisitions. So, how can people learn more about you as well as your company? Because maybe they want to explore what this looks like for them.
Yeah, we'll be happy to. We're in the process of doing a web update. I'm sorry, I'm a little behind in technology some. And that what we're going to have soon on our website are especially tools, lessons we've learned, worksheets to begin that beginning step of that process for you to start thinking about it internally, doing that internal assessment, thinking about, looking at partners, what are the appropriate partner, how do you begin that process? So we'll have all these tools on site, which are good tools to begin thinking about the process. We again highly recommend, the investment in and having, an expert like me or you to do it. And what we have been recommending to organizations and the foundations is that the consultant and the partners need to put some skin in the game before they go to a foundation to ask for it. In the past, we funded tons of these massive feasibility assessments that didn't go anywhere because it was free money. And so put some skin in the game, be prepared to be able to put some skin in the game, and we'll give you advice on how to make that happen. And the easiest way, just give me a call, 404-936-1211. I may not be able to answer the phone right away, but I promise I'll get to you as soon as I can.
Who needs a web page when you've got Erik's direct line?
Yeah, you can call me anytime except late at night.
Yeah, I love that. Well, any final takeaway? You've dropped so many fantastic nuggets, lots of wisdom, great insight. Anything you want to leave our listeners with today?
Yeah, it's spend time to determine what your core is. Focus on your core. And if you have to reduce a budget because of declining fundraising, this is the perfect time to do it, right? To go back to what you do best, uniquely different from everybody else, promote that, and begin thinking about what you want from a partner to take care of the issues that and/or your client needs that's not your core strength. That's the best thing I can recommend we start doing right now.
Great advice. Erik, I have loved your passion as we have this conversation. I know when we met, and that's probably going back to Jenny, why Jenny Waller suggested, hey, I think the two of you need to know each other as well. So thank you for nerding out with me and joining me for the conversation. It's been a true pleasure.
I was a born nerd and I'll die a nerd, so I completely relate and love it. It has been a delight, Jarrett. Thank you so much.